Today in part B of Lab 1, which was entitled CV, the Curriculum Vitae, we were asked to create a curriculum vitae using three language styles, which were HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. We were given a template, and this template needed to be adjusted and modified in order to resemble a proper CV. Each three of these language styles had a part which needed to be modified. Firstly, the CSS code was responsible for changing the name font from red to blue, and later the header names, for example, education, skills, and hobbies, from black to a purple color. Afterwards, the JavaScript section was responsible for implementing the last updated date, which were done by the functions of document.getElementID, as well as document.last modified, which gave the last modified date. Lastly, the HTML language was edited in order to simply replace all the regular writing from the template to our own. Things like our name, our actual skills and hobbies, our education, and whatnot. The HTML was used to make a table for the education portion. It was used to make point form or bullet notes in the skills and hobbies portion. It was also used to make the address, email, number in italic font. It was also used to be able to link a picture, which is your CV picture, into your actual CV by importing it through the virtual machine onto the actual code. After all these adjustments were made in the pre-CV folder, they were later used to transfer them to three separate files in the CV, each for their own language. One was cv.css, the other was cv.js, and lastly index.html. The CSS portion held only what was responsible and used by the CSS language, which did happen to be the beginning portion of the code, where there was the name color from red to blue, which we adjusted, as well as the header size and evidently the color that we added to be purple. After that, the cv.js section, which was responsible for JavaScript, held the implementations for the date. It was showing up in green, which we also had to adjust, and the code that we implemented, which was document.getElementID, as well as document.lastModified, were responsible for correctly obtaining the last modified date or last updated date to which our CV was modified. Lastly, the index.html file was responsible for solely everything else, which was basically done in the HTML language. Everything from the actual writing, everything from the table that was used, and as well as the actual picture that was contained in Part B. In Part C of Lab 1, which was entitled CV, we were asked to make further adjustments to the JavaScript language of our CV. In this section, we were asked to implement a function which would swap out a second image in our CV upon a tap. Furthermore, this code required us to implement the function in such a way that if the first picture that showed up is not the second picture, then upon a tap it would replace. And that is the only way we were able to implement it. This was done again by the document.getElementID function, and then an if statement was required to accommodate to check if the current picture does resemble the second one or if not, and then to switch them over.